What is up, everybody? We're on day 115 of our Bible in a Year series. We are currently continuing through First Chronicles, and it is interesting. There's a purpose in every book that's in the Bible. It's including First Chronicles. Some of these that are difficult to read seem boring, maybe on the surface, but as you get into it, you start to see some other things, and we've been pointing that out as we've been going through, and we'll continue to do so today. We are in chapter 7, and we'll read 7 through 9 today. Screen's going to look a little bit different. I'm messing with the layout again, so you will have to let me know what you think. If you like it, don't like it. If you want to see less of my face, I get it. Okay, chapter 7. Issachar's sons, Tola, Pua, Jashub, and Shimron, 4. Tola's sons, Uzi, Raphaiah, Jeriel, Jamai, Ibsim, and Shemuel, the heads of their ancestral families. During David's reign, 22,600 descendants of Tola were recorded as valiant warriors in their family records. Uzziah's son, Izrahiah's son, Michael, Obadiah, Joel, Ishiah, all 5 of them were chiefs. Along with them, they had 36,000 troops for battle according to the family records of their ancestral families, for they had many wives and children. Their tribesmen, who were valiant warriors, belonged to all the families of Issachar, totaled 87,000 of their genealogies. 3 of Benjamin's sons, Bela, Becher, and Jediel, Bela's sons, Ezbon, Uzi, Uziel, Jeremoth, and Eri, 5. They were valiant warriors and heads of their ancestral families. 22,034 were listed in their genealogies. Becher's sons, Zemira, Joash, Eleazar, Elianai, Omri, Jeremoth, Abijah, Anathoth, and Alimeth. All these were Becher's sons. Their family records were recorded according to the heads of their ancestral families. 20,200 valiant warriors. Jediel's son, Bilhan, Bilhan's sons, Jeush, Benjamin, Ehud, Chinana, yeah, I'm sure, Zethan, Tarshish, and Ahishahar. All these sons of Jediel, listed by family heads, were valiant warriors. There were 17,200 who could serve in the army. Shupam and Huppam were sons of and the Hushim were the sons of Ahir. Naphtali's sons, Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shalom. Bilhah's sons, Manasseh's son through his Aramean concubine, Azriel, and Machir, the father of Gilead. Machir took wives from Huppam and Shupam. The name of his sister was Makkah. Another descendant was named Zelophehad, but he had only daughters. Machir's wife, Makkah, gave birth to a son, and she named him Perish. His brother was named Sheresh, and his sons were Ulam and Rechem. Ulam's sons, Bedan. These were the sons of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh. His sister Hamolecheth gave birth to Ishhad, Abiezer, and Maniah. Shemitah's sons, Ahian, Shechem, Lechi, and Aniam. Sure. Ephraim's sons, Shuthalah, and his son Bered. His son Tahath, his son Eliadah, his son Tahath, his son Zabed, his son Shutnela, also Ezer, and Eliad. The men of Gath, born in the land, killed them because they went down to raid their cattle. Their father Ephraim mourned a long time, and his relatives came to comfort him. He slept with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Beriah, because there had been misfortune in his home. His daughter was Shira, who built Lower and Upper Beth Horon, and Uzan Shira. His son Rephah, his son Resheph, his son Tilah, his son Tahan, his son Ladan, his son Amihud, his son Elishama, his son Nun, and his son Joshua. Their holdings and settlements were Bethel and its surrounding villages, Iran to the east, Gezer and its villages to the west, and Shechem and its villages as far as Ayah and its villages. And along the borders of the descendants of Manasseh, Beth Shean, Tanakh, Megiddo, and Dor, with their surrounding villages, the sons of Joseph, son of Israel, lived in these towns. Asher's sons, Imnah, Ishvi, and Beriah, with their sister Sirah. Beriah's sons, Heber and Malachil, who fathered Birzaith. Heber fathered Japhet, Shomer, and Hotham, with their sister Shua. Japhet's sons, Pasak, Bimhal, and Ashvath. These were Japhet's sons. Shimmer's sons, Ahi, Rogha, Huba, and Aram. His brother Helam's sons, Zophah, Imnah, Shalish, and Amal. Zophah's sons, Suha, Harnepher, Shul, Beri, Imrah, Bezir, Had, Shama, Shilsha, Ithran, and Bera. Jether's sons, Jephunneh, Pispa, and Ara. Ulah's sons, Ara, Haniel, and Rizia. All these were Asher's descendants. They were the heads of their ancestral families, chosen men, valiant warriors, and chiefs among the leaders. The number of men listed in their genealogies for military service was 26,000. Chapter 8. Benjamin fathered Bilhah, his firstborn. Ashbel was born second, Ahara third, Nohan fourth, and Rapha fifth. Belah's sons, Ader, Gera, Abihud, Abishua, Naaman, Ahoa, Gera, Shephufan, and Huram. These were Ehud's sons, who were the heads of the families living in Geba, and who were deported to Manath. Naaman, Ahijah, and Gera. Gera deported them, was the father of Uzzah and Anihud. Shaharaim had sons in the territory of Moab after he had divorced his wives, Husham and Bara. His sons by his wife Hodesh, Jobab, Zibiah, Mesha, Malacham, Jeuz, Sakia, and Mirma. These were his sons' family heads. He also had sons by Husham, Abitub, and Elpal. Elpal's sons, Eber, Misham, and Shemed, who built Ono and Lod and its surrounding villages. Beriah and Shema, who were the family heads of Ajalon's residents, and who drove out the residents of Gath, Ahio, Shashak, and Jeremoth. Zebediah, Arad, Eder, Michael, Ishpa, and Joha were Beriah's sons. Zebediah, Meshullam, Hizki, Heber, Ishmerai, Isliah, and Jobab were Elpal's sons. Jachim, Zikri, Zabdi, Eliani, Zilathai, Eliel, Adiah, Beriah, and Shimrath were Shimi's sons. Ishpan, Eber, Eliel, Abdon, Zikri, Hanan, Hananiah, Elam, Anthothechah, Ifdiah, and Pinuel were Shashak's sons. Shemshiri, Shehariah, Athaliah, Jarashia, Elijah, and Zikri were Jeroham's sons. These were family heads, chiefs according to their family records. They lived in Jerusalem. Jeiel fathered Gibeon and lived in Gibeon. His wife's name was Makkah. Abdon was his firstborn son. Then Zur, Kish, Baal, Nadab, Gedor, Ahio, Zechor, and Mikloth, who fathered Shimeah. These also lived opposite their relatives in Jerusalem with their other relatives. Ner fathered Kish, Kish fathered Saul, and Saul fathered Jonathan, Malchishua, Abinadab, and Eshbaal. Jonathan's son was Meribbaal, and Meribbaal fathered Micah. Micah's sons, Pithon, Melech, Teriah, and Ahaz. Ahaz fathered Jehoiada. Jehoiada fathered Alamoth, Asmaveth, and Zimri fathered Moza. Moza fathered Benia. His sons were Rapha, his son Elasa, and his son Aziel. Aziel had 6 sons, and these were their names: Azrikam, Bokeru, Ishmael, Sheariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. All these were Azael's sons. His brother Eshek's sons: Ulam was his firstborn, Jeush second, and Eliphelet third. Ulam's sons were valiant warriors and archers. They had many sons and grandsons, 150 of them. All these were among Benjamin's sons. Okay, chapter 9. All Israel was registered in the genealogies that are written in the book of Kings of Israel. But Judah was exiled to Babylon because of their unfaithfulness. The first to live in their towns on their own property again were Israelites, priests, Levites, and temple servants. These people from the descendants of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, settled in Jerusalem. Uthai, son of Amihud, son of Omri, son of Imri, son of Bani, a descendant of Perez, son of Judah, from the Shilonites, Asaiah, the firstborn, and his sons, and from the descendants of Zerah, Jeuel, and their relatives, 690 in all. The Benjamites, Salu, son of Meshullam, son of Hodaviah, son of Hasanua, Ibniah, son of Jeroham, Elah, son of Uzi, son of Mikri, Meshullam, son of Shephatiah, son of Reuel, son of Ibnijah, and their relatives according to their family records, 956 in all. All these men were heads of their ancestral families. The priests, Jediah, Jehoriab, Jachin, Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Meshullam, son of Zadok, son of Marioth, son of Ahitub, the chief official of God's temple, Adiah, son of Jeroham, son of Pashur, son of Malchijah, Masai, son of Adiel, son of Jazirah, son of Meshullam, son of Meshilemeth, son of Immer, and their relatives, the heads of their ancestral families, 1,760 in all. They were capable men and employed in the ministry of God's temple. The Levites, Shemaiah, son of Hashab, son of Azrikam, son of Hashabiah, and the Merarites, Bakbakar, Harish, Galal, and Mataniah, son of Micah, son of Zikri, son of Asaph, Obadiah, son of Shemaiah, son of Galal, son of Jeduthun, and Berechiah, son of Asa, son of Elkanah, who lived in the settlements of the Netophathites. I imagine if you were listening to this with captions on, they're giving you some lovely spellings. I'm going to have to go back and see how they spell some of these. Verse 17. I'm sure my pronunciation is not helping either. Verse 17. The gatekeepers, Shalom, Akab, Talmon, Ahiam, and their relative Shallum was their chief. He was previously stationed to the king's gate on the east side. There were gatekeepers from the camp of the Levites. Shallum, son of Kor, son of Ebiasaph, son of Korah, and his relatives from his ancestral family. The Korahites were assigned to guard the thresholds of the tent. Their ancestors had been assigned to the Lord's camp as guardians of the entrance. In earlier times, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, had been their leader, and the Lord was with him. Zechariah, son of Meshalemiah, was the gatekeeper at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The total number of those chosen to be gatekeepers at the threshold was 212. They were registered by genealogy in their settlements. David and the seer Samuel had appointed them to their trusted positions. So they and their sons were assigned as guards at the gates of the Lord's temple, which had been the tent temple. The gatekeepers were on 4 sides, east, west, north, and south. Their relatives came from their settlements at fixed times to be with them 7 days. But the 4 chief gatekeepers, who were Levites, were entrusted with the rooms and the treasuries of God's temple. They spent the night in the vicinity of God's temple because they had guard duty and were in charge of opening it every morning. Some of them were in charge of the utensils used in worship. They would count them when they brought them in and when they took them out. Others were put in charge of the furnishings of all the utensils of the sanctuary, as well as the fine flour, wine, oil, incense, and spices. Some of the priest's sons mixed the spices. A Levite called Mattaniah, the firstborn of Shallum, the Korahite, was entrusted with baking the bread. Some of the Kohathites relatives were responsible for preparing the rows of the bread of the presence every Sabbath. The singers, the heads of the Levite families, stayed in the temple chambers and were exempt from other tasks because they were on duty day and night. These were the heads of the Levite families, chiefs according to their family records. They lived in Jerusalem. Jeiel fathered Gibeon and lived in Gibeon. His wife's name was Maacah. Abdon was his firstborn son. Then Zur, Kish, Baal, Ner, Nadab, Geder, Ahio, Zechariah, and Mikloth. Mikloth fathered Shimeam. These also lived opposite their relatives in Jerusalem with their other relatives. Ner fathered Kish, Kish fathered Saul, and Saul fathered Jonathan, Malchishua, Abinadab, and Eshbaal. Jonathan's son was Merabaal, and Merabaal fathered Micah. Micah's sons, Pithon, Melech, Tariah, and Ahaz. Ahaz fathered Jarah. Jarah fathered Alemeth, Asmaveth, and Zimri. Zimri fathered Moza. Moza fathered Benia, and his son was Rephaiah. His son Elasa, and his son Azel. Azel had 6 sons, and these were the names of Azirachim, Bocheru, Ishmael, Shariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. These were Azel's sons. Okay. That is it for our reading, not for our questions. We haven't started our questions yet. But that is it for our reading. And, okay, questions. Question 1. The genealogies in chapter 7 trace Israel's tribes despite their exile. How does this meticulous record deepen our theological grasp of God's steadfast commitment to his people, preserving their identity for his redemptive purposes? Again, like I've said this, I feel like I've said it pretty much every day in Chronicles so far, but this is, I mean, it's kind of a main point that we see in Chronicles, or a main purpose thread throughout, and it is that God keeps his promises, and even when Israel does wrong and does bad enough to go through an exile, to be taken over by a foreign adversary and taken out of Israel, God is still keeping his promise, and he brings them back, and he fulfills what he says he's going to do. I think that is a big through line that we see throughout this book of First Chronicles. Question 2. Chapter 9 highlights the priest and Levite service in Jerusalem post-exile. How might this emphasis on restored worship challenge us to reflect on the theological role of communal devotion as a response to God's presence fulfilled in the church? Well, one of the things, like this says, post-exile, one of the things that they mention early on, and they do early on, is to establish this again. A way for the people to go about the meeting with God, right? And so I think that shows the importance of it. Now, for us today, it's different. Obviously, we don't have the tent, we don't have the temple. We are able to approach God on our own. We have a mediator through Jesus, and so it does look different, but we should still keep that same importance. I think part of that could be not forsaking the gathering together and meeting together. I think that's a very important thing that a lot of people don't put enough emphasis on. I think that you can avoid a lot of snares if you just make sure that you're meeting and staying in communion with other believers. But I think that is an important thing to take away, that we can take away there. Question 3. Written to encourage exiles, these chapters point to a renewed community. How does this hope invite us to wrestle with the theological tension between God's judgment on sin and his promise of restoration, ultimately realized through Christ's kingdom? We can see that sin is important. Not important. Sin is, it's a big deal, right? It's not something to be brushed over easily. It's not something to just be done away with. It's a big deal. There has to be atonement. There has to be repercussion. Now, even with that, we still have promises from God that he will hold to if we do what we need to for our part. So we're told that we can be forgiven of our sin if we believe in Jesus, trust in the finished work of the cross and what he did for us. There are things God has told us, things that God has promised that he will uphold. Now, like we've also talked about too, and prior to this book and this chapter, there still can be earthly consequences for sin. It's not just instantly wiped away. Yes, sometimes it can be. We're told, or the guarantee we're given is that if we put our faith in Christ, the eternal consequences of our sin can be dealt with. But there are still sometimes earthly consequences to sin that are not just done away with. And that's part of life. That's part of something that we have to deal with. It just is. So I think it's an important thing to keep in mind. That is it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I enjoy seeing people's comments and interacting when I'm able to. If this has been a blessing to you, spread the word. The number one way that podcasts grow is actually through word of mouth. So if it's been a blessing to you, share it with somebody else, and it can maybe be a blessing to them as well. We're trying to encourage people and give them a resource to help keep up with a good daily Bible reading practice. And so that's kind of what the purpose of this series has been. So if it's been a blessing to you, you can share it with others there. Don't forget to come back tomorrow, and we're going to continue on in First Chronicles and getting a little bit deeper. And we're starting to see more of a history of Israel, still some genealogies, but shifting more towards the history of Israel and things that we've already seen some of, but we're recapping and looking at. And this is, again, it's telling them, it's showing the importance of God keeping his promise and everything with there. So don't forget, come back tomorrow. Hope it continues to bless you. God bless.